Hello, everyone, and welcome with another one of the English One podcasts. Today's guest is Nelson Jones. Welcome.
Hey, thank you very much for having me.
I find it funny that you are someone who's actually coaching a lot of guys, and you were the first coach of, for example, of a Martin Fitzwater, who's right now a big guy in the industry, fourth on the Olympia. So I think that bringing you closer to the people, it might be something that's it's needed in the industry, I think, because I follow you for a while, and actually, I've almost barely can see you on any YouTube videos and stuff like that, and that's a shame.
Sure. Sure. Yeah, I'm not much on social media. I don't post super often and I don't know. Yeah, I guess I just I had my efforts haven't been there, you know?
Yeah,
So for sure.
yeah, this is why I think you are a legit coach for my standards. Just because there are many coaches who are just good marketers, let's say it like that.
Sure.
So everyone's just talks about the Matt right now. I don't think that Matt is in that position because Matt is a legit coach, in my opinion. But we are
Sure.
not going to talk about it. But there's a many of those people who are talks more than walks the walk. I would say,
Sure.
and you actually were a bodybuilder, but you decided that you are stuck with that. I'm not agreeing with it, but can you just briefly bring us to your history?
Sure. I started coaching people kind of around when I had started bodybuilding in college. Um, so that was a long time ago. And I just started some people had asked me for a diet because I was bodybuilding. They're like, "Oh, can you help me with that?" And awesome. I loved it. So I loved helping people too, and it was exciting to talk about, and it's exciting to research what to do. And that was back when the forums were really big, So we were all on Professional Muscle, and
I'm still
uh,
over there.
oh, you are,
Yeah, of
yeah.
course.
I still go over there from time to time to see, what's up. But yeah, I started coaching full time in 2016. Quit my job and went full time with coaching, just because I had enough clients to do it. And then at 2019 is when I thought, okay, I'm going to be kind of a big deal. I'm going to push myself and see how far I can get with bodybuilding. Obviously, it's something I always wanted. I wanted to be a good bodybuilder. Um, and 2020 was when I was going to do a national level show, kind of push into that. I was getting ready for the junior nationals with Chad Nichols, um, and COVID hit, and my show got canceled, and the one after that got canceled, and the one after that got canceled, and then it became one of those things where I'm like, I don't think this is really cut out. I'm not cut up for it, because obviously I'm seeing like they're phenomenal bodybuilders, and I had to really fight to get big. Because naturally, just a smaller person. I'm 5'6", and when I got to college, I was 118. So I'm a pretty small guy. And when I started dieting for the first show I was going to do was the junior nationals that year. I was 240 with abs. So I had progressed a long way to get to that point. Um, but then I guess just how it happened in 2021, I ended up having internal bleeding. Um, and it was one of those things where I just realized, like, man, after this, like coming back the recovery and all that, I don't think I can ever be that big again. And so I kept up some muscle for a while. And then, I had lots of shoulder problems from pressing so heavy for so long because my frame wasn't really meant for it. So I kind of pushed my body to do something it wasn't meant for. And it's not like I have regrets. I love bodybuilding. Bodybuilding's, it had gotten me a great job and it's affording me tons of relationships here. But for like a small frame guy, I'm not supposed to be a bodybuilder. And so, at this point now I have like bone spurs and bursitis in my shoulder. And I've kind of transitioned more to like for myself, I spend more time doing jujitsu and things like that. But I love helping people with bodybuilding. So the rest of the time has been coaching. Last year, or I guess it was early this year, it's still this year. I decided to pull clients way down just because I had had so many for so long. So I could spend more time with my two daughters. But that's a lot of time in like, that little short synopsis. But I'd be happy to tell you anything you want to know.
I just wanted to ask you if it's fine, okay, is it okay with you? How old are you when you quit the bodybuilding?
Um, is 30,
30. So pretty young
31.
for a bodybuilder, but
Yeah,
now I get it. Just because you're obviously double your size, so telling me that you are not meant to be a bodybuilder was kind
sure.
of sketchy. But then
Okay.
after you told me about all the injuries, that's probably a wiser from your side to just quit. Yeah.
I had grown a lot. I just had to push my body so hard. Um, for me, it's like I don't have an appetite ever. I'm not a hungry guy. And man, I had to battle at the table. And I got kind of fat pretty easily. So it would have to be clean food. Um, I'm not the guy who could go eat McDonald's and just look full. It's like I get pretty sloppy. So I remember when I was working with Chad, we started with 10-ounce portions. And then from there were also 12 and 14-ounce portions of meat. Um, for me, that was wild because I had been previous to that 8 to 10 ounces for years. Um, but doing that day in, day out for long periods of time, and then a lot of PEDs, of course.
Yeah.
I think it just took a toll on my body. I still I love the training and everything. I just don't think that um, my bones are meant to withstand it, and my joints, because I was meant to be a small person. So you're right. I got pretty big for me, um, but it doesn't look nearly as big. I guess it sounds more impressive than it is because I feel like in person, like, oh, really? You 240 right now? Didn't look as big.
Yeah, but I forgot the same thing that you I think so. For me, everyone's telling me that I'm actually huge and stuff like that, but
Yep.
I didn't see that. Never. I've always thought about myself that I am too small and I'm always like the smallest guy in the room, even though
Sure.
I've weighed, for example, 20 kilos more than a guy next to me. So I get it. It's like an imposter syndrome in your head, but
Sure.
yeah, but I think you were quite a good bodybuilder for your structure. Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And looking back, I do think that will change for you later on when you like end up getting older and you downsize or whatever you do. Generally, we look back at pictures. It's kind of like the contest prep. 3 months after the contest prep, you look at yourself way differently than a week out. A week out, you'll pull your glute skin and it'll be thin, and you're like, God, I'm so fat. It's like I can't believe I'm this fat.
Yeah.
And then 3 months later, you're like, oh, I was shredded.
Yeah, I'm kind of in a situation like right now, so so totally get what you're talking about. Okay, so let's get into the topic because today's topic is gonna be actually about your approach to coaching because you first of all are a coach right now, like not even a first of all, you are a coach right now. You are not a bodybuilder anymore. You're gonna be a bodybuilder in your heart for the rest of your life,
Sure.
of
Sure.
course. but you know what I mean by that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just want to get into the off season first. So for reference, we just gonna talk about a guy who's for example, 5'7", so like 170 centimeters and about 100 to 105 kilo, and wanted to
Okay.
jump over the weight class, for example. So he's heavyweight right now, and he just wanted to go to the open. Okay, so let's say that's me, and I'm just finished my contest prep. And
Sure.
obviously, I am healthy. I've done all the blood tests. Everything's
Mhm.
fine. We can start right away. We don't have to
Yep.
clean anything, stuff like that. I am like a just clean blanket for you to work on me to keep me from 100 kilos to, for example, I don't know how much you wanted me to put on, so I'm just gonna leave you with that. So for the first question, how are you gonna set up the training for during the off season? Like, are you focusing on more like a volume training, more intensity training, maybe both? Like, I don't know, like Ronnie Coleman style or something
Sure.
like that?
Okay. Really good question. Um, and obviously, it's like the blanket of all this is it depends, but I'm trying to give you as real answers as I can here. Um, I think intensity is more important than volume. However, they are kind of inversely correlated. As volume come, I mean, as intensity comes down, volume must go up. You can't do half-ass sets and only do two of them. It doesn't work. You know, you're going to have to really push yourself, and the harder you push yourself, the less volume you can do. So my goal for an athlete would be to get them to train as hard as possible, and I'm kind of watching their recovery here. Um, and if it's great, okay, maybe we only need, let's say, 8 to 10 sets in a chest workout because they're just hammering. If they have 10 sets and, let's say they're doing uh, 4 exercises and they're not recovering, we might have to pull that back a little bit or look at other factors. But ideally, uh, I want moderate to lower volume um, on big body parts. I think things like arms, you can push volume. They recover pretty easily, but something like quads, I don't think you should do 6 sets of to the death hack squats. I think you're going to bury yourself and you won't be able to recover, And obviously, you have some people with just freaky recovery. And it looks like, for the most part, you push them as hard as they can recover, right? If you have immense recovery ability, being able to give you more volume could be good. A lot of times, though, what I would say is you'd want it dispersed throughout the week. Um, and generally, by giving that space and more time to recover, you can get more volume in. Um, but that's kind of how I approach volume. Um, I My goal is intensity. I think that's most important.
Yeah, but we're talking about the volume and we're talking about the intensity, but we have one more things to set up, and it's frequency. So how frequent you wanted me to hit the 10 sets of chest, for example? Because
Sure.
if you said 10 set of chest, are you mean for session or during the week?
Okay, that's a great question. So for like a chest workout, I'm talking about the session. If I'm going to touch it again later, so let's say I have um here's how I would look at it. If I have a guy and I need to bring up his chest, I'm going to touch it more than just once a week. If his pecs look great, and everything is even, I might touch it more than once a week, or he might only be training 4 days and it's just kind of a bro split. Um, but let's say his pecs need to come up. I might have him do a chest day And then on his back day, there's one chest exercise at the end, or or on his arm day, he has some volume up here, whether it's pecs or pecs and shoulders. Because I mean, arms for most people, arms is like a an active recovery day. You're going to be able to train arms and get away with it. I don't like training arms with back or with chest if that's your only arm workout and your arms need progress. If your arms are phenomenal, if you had Ty Green's arms, then like sure, but otherwise, I think most people could use that day. Um, and it's something that's not as taxing, but they're still in the gym. They're still getting something.
Okay. So you're gonna set it up like in a bra split way,
For
as
the
I
most part.
assume. Yeah. So it's gonna be like a chest separately and shoulders separately, arms separately, quads and hamstrings probably separately. Yes.
So I like chest and shoulders together,
So like a push.
which isn't a huge change. So basically, it's a push day. Um, and I do have some people doing push pull legs, arms. But I like arms and shoulders together just because I feel like when we're hitting chest and then we're hitting shoulders separately, it's a lot of work on your shoulders. Um, and as these guys get stronger, their rotator cuffs and all the surrounding tissues, like it gets a lot of wear, especially when you're over here. You know, if you're behind the neck pressing 315, if you're, Smith pressing 4 plates, that's a lot.
Yeah.
And to come in here and do that and chest, I don't think it's necessary. Um, so generally, I keep push together, and then back. That's by itself. Um, Legs, I often split. I usually split legs when legs need to come up, and most of the time they do.
Yeah.
Um, I like hams and quads, and I'll put a little bit of quads on ham day and a little bit of the inverse as well. And that way, it's basically a full leg day on both times, but you're not taxing something that's already super taxed, right? You're not repeating the same exercises.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, it's like a pretty standard, I would say, but yeah. Okay. So when it comes to the diet in the off season, do you like to keep your guys on a leaner side, or do you prefer to do something like a dirty bulk if he needs a really push the weight class?
My preference is always leaner. Feel like you just get a better response from a leaner athlete. You can feed a leaner athlete more and they can do more with the food. You can use tools like insulin with a leaner athlete. And when you have a fatter athlete, it's a waste to use that. Um, when someone has like very good insulin sensitivity, those nutrients just they end up finding their way to the right places better. Um, so I don't necessarily have a body fat that I'm like, oh, okay, this is too much. But I look at the obvious parts, right? If when you compete, your lower back is just hell to bring in, and it's thick and it's hard and it's like a 40 millimeter pinch, we can't let your back get too crazy because it's going to be so hard to bring in. And we don't want to lose. Let's say you put on like these, like thick hamstrings. We're going to have to cardio off that back fat. What might take or what might happen is we end up losing some of the progress because we had to diet so hard. And I don't want that. It's like if we keep ourselves a little closer, I feel like we can make more progress.
Yeah, definitely. And insulin sensitivity is a big thing for you, yes?
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay. It's okay. So let's just, we have to, first of all, assess how you're going to count your macros because everyone
Okay.
is do it in some way. So some people counting protein only from the direct sources. So for example, like 300 grams of protein, but only from the meats. So not counting like rice,
Right.
pasta and stuff like that. Others, more often right now in our industry, are counting everything in like, for example, like, I don't know, chronometer or something like that. So how you are gonna counting your macros?
I'm a direct sources person. So I like higher protein. In males, I like really high protein. So if someone gets like, let's say I have an almond butter or something in, I don't care that he got 6 grams. Like it doesn't
Yeah.
do anything, or whatever. He had rice and it's like it's an incomplete protein. I want the main sources of protein. Like that's what I'm really looking at. I'm looking at uh the meats that he's getting. And obviously, like I like whey. Whey's fine as long as you digest it well. I don't mind like fat-free Greek yogurt. That's cool. But what I'm usually looking for is I'm looking for a good amino acid profile of several different lean meats usually. And I do like red meat, but the majority I use lean meats.
Okay. Okay, so let's find out what you mean by higher protein. How much?
Okay, sure. Um, so if we're looking at um, it really depends on where the person starts, right? I don't have this like, oh, a middleweight needs 250, and then once you move to light heavy,
Okay,
usually we're looking forward. Go ahead.
I'm just gonna tell you that we are talking about me, and I'm
Sure,
eating
yeah, still,
currently 300 grams of protein a day. So 6 meals, and it's 50 grams of protein per serving. So it's like a
yes, sir.
250 grams of chicken raw.
Yep. Right. So what I'd probably be looking to do is move that closer to the 300 gram mark um, per serving. We'd be looking. So for you, I feel like that's pretty big. That's a little low on protein for me. I push that protein up. Um, and the only reason I mentioned of like, because obviously I know we're talking about you as an athlete.
Yeah.
Um, I'm just saying I don't have a starting point for if I got a middleweight, we'd start this. If I got a light heavy, we'd start this. Because some people, they come to you and they're, doing very low amounts of protein. Um, Generally, I edge them up. We don't automatically jump up to a 300 gram per
Yeah.
serving if they're taking 200, grams. Um, but yeah, so for you, I'd push it closer to that 400. We would probably start with smaller increments of bumping. But yeah, I like higher protein for that.
Yeah, okay. I'm the same. I like to keep it a little bit higher. So yeah. Okay, so how about the fats? Because the carbs, it's gonna be obvious answer, the rest. But what about the fats in the off season? Because there are some people who thinks that fats are necessary just because they are building the obviously the hormones, the
Yep.
neurotransmitters, and stuff like that, and it's needed for the brain function and stuff like that. But obviously, if we are taking PEDs, in my
Mhm.
opinion,
Mhm.
not so much needed. But
Sure.
what's your state about it?
Right. We don't need the fats to build the hormones, is what you're saying. 100%. Um, I think we do need essential fats. I incorporate fish oil in every program. Um, I don't know if you're familiar with Charles Poliquin. He was very
Of
popular.
course.
Okay, yeah, yeah. He used tons of fish oil and lots of experiments with, especially with obese people, and they lost a lot of weight. I think using fish oil is very helpful, and not, like 1 gram, like putting some in the morning, putting some at night. I like eggs in the morning, having just some. I like red meat. Having some essential fats, I think, is great. Just for body function. I actually think for a lot of people, it helps you lose fat easier. Even I know, like it sounds silly, but like the fish oil, um, having some in there almost lets your body know you don't have any. Um, where if you are eating egg whites, tilapia, rice cakes. You know, a lot of bodies will become resistant. So I don't do a lot of fats, honestly. I would say, if anything, probably moderate in the off season and lower in prep for the most part. But keeping a little bit of essential fat in, I think, is helpful.
So, for example, let's get me through a diet for a guy like me, for example.
Yep.
Let's say
Sure.
that we are starting with a very lean body. I'm eating 300 grams of protein, like we said, so 50 grams per meal. I'm eating around 300 grams of carbs daily, and I'm eating right now about 5 grams of fats daily. Not counting the essential fats because I took 8,000 milligrams of APA and DHA a day. So it's like a
Great.
10,000 grams of fish oil. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. You're probably fine.
Yeah.
I'll leave it there. As far as like added stuff, in where prepping, I wouldn't add anything.
I know
Especially
we are gonna booking. So
okay,
how
Oh,
are you
right.
gonna
Yeah,
assess my
moving
diet? That
out.
was my
Okay.
cutting diet.
Okay, I got you. Then yeah, I probably would add some. Like there would be some from like let's say red meat or salmon. I think that's like
Can
and
you
if you
just briefly write me a diet in your head? So for example,
sure,
meal one, it's gonna be 100 grams of
sure,
oats and something
yeah,
like that.
absolutely. Um, could you remind me of the carb amount one more time?
300 grams. Right
Okay,
now,
so we have three.
okay, if to be exact, right now I'm eating on a training days 260 grams of carbs.
Okay, cool. So that's not a lot.
Yeah.
So probably so especially when we're going into off season, the first thing I want to do is I want to get carbs up. That's my priority. So I'd edge your protein up just because I want to. So let's say we put it at 325. Uh, and then for carbs, we're going from like 260. It's like I'd probably make a jump to 350 or 375 right out the gate. Just something like pop it up, a little extra performance. And then fat, I might leave alone. Or we might add a red meat meal as the first thing. And whether that's, let's say it's 10 to 20 grams of fat, it'd be something around there. Generally, especially when you have a really lean individual starting out, um, it doesn't really matter. Let's say I say something like 8 ounces like of steak, which would be like around 50 grams of protein. Um, and then the fat's going to vary because it's steak. But
Yeah.
I do think that the intramuscular triglycerides are helpful in just like keeping you fuller, and most people feel pretty good eating it. And when we're looking towards off season and performance, how you feel is pretty important with just performance in the gym and all that.
So we are still not having a diet, so waiting for that.
I'm sorry. You said it and I gave you a number and I didn't. Okay, so let's take a look at meal one. Let's say it would be something like uh, one whole egg, 400 grams of egg whites, um, 80 grams of oats, and a piece of fruit. I really like fruit. I think that's good just to have a vitamin. Meal two, I'd probably say we do something like 9 ounces of lean meat, whether that's 99 turkey or a trimmed grilled chicken or fish, whatever digests well there, something lean. And 220 grams of rice. The Let's say you train after meal three, we do something very similar, whether that be an isolate um, or lean meat, and then 220 grams of rice or 90 grams of cream of rice. usually that sits pretty well with people going into the gym. One thing I do pre-training with a lot of people is Rice Krispie treats. Just it's a little sugar going in the gym. I don't know if I would put that there right out of a prep, but if we're bumping carbs up, I'd probably put it there. I really like carbs intra workout. For me, I think that is a huge aid in recovery, and it also really helps performance in the gym. There are studies that have shown that even a 15-gram intra helps performance.
Yeah.
So when we have someone who's going to go in and train for 90 minutes and do legs, training intensity is paramount. Obviously, we don't want some huge 3-liter thing that you have to have sitting on your stomach. But something like thin, even like a Gatorade, it really helps. I like that with aminos. And as long as it sits well and digests well, I think that helps. Post-workout, the speed of the nutrients isn't that important because you had the intra-workout. If you didn't, then I'd be concerned about speed. But we could even take in a slower digesting protein here because we had the intra. But we probably do, let's say, the same amount of lean meat, and we could do, rice cakes, something that sits well after. I think we're at 4 meals. For a 5th meal, I'd probably do a red meat. I really like red meat. Let's say it's a similar amount. And we could do rice, potato, another piece of fruit. And then the last meal, we're doing 25. We're up around 100 grams of carbs at least. So we're good on carbs. I wouldn't need fats for the last meal or anything slow like I know some people do. But I would put, depending on how hungry the person is, because obviously if you're done for the day, sometimes a shake and something else is easy to go to bed. But we do lean meat and then some kind of carbs that they would digest well. I don't mind lean meat before someone goes to bed. Red meat. I think that's totally fine. Oftentimes, I find putting it in the meal 5 helps it digest a little better. They're like active, it's moving. You have another meal and then you go to bed. Sometimes when they just have it in the last meal and they go to bed, it sits and they wake up bloated. So I put it a little before generally.
Okay. So it will be a 6 meals, yes?
For someone of your size,
Yeah.
at least.
Yeah.
At least.
To be honest, after the show, I would be starving on that.
Well, right, but I mean, it's like even then, it's just like that was a 100-gram carb bump.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And
of course.
so here's what I think about. If someone's coming right from a show, usually they take the weekend to eat whatever they want. And Monday we start. I like starting something like that, and then we take Monday through Friday to get on this new plan. You lose the water, you're still fuller because you're eating more food.
Yeah.
Cardio's pulled down, and then we can look at it after a 5 to 7 day kind of bump and be like, okay, was that appropriate? Do we need a little longer, or can we bump it again?
Okay.
I prefer doing that rather than just being like, okay, here's 400 grams extra carbs. Go ahead.
Yeah.
I'd rather lose that water, clean up a little, and then make that second bump.
Makes sense. Makes sense. And what about the carb cycling? Because some of the coaches really like to do something like a lower carb days on the non-training days. Sometimes they bump it up the fats on those days, but lowering the carbs amounts. How you thinking about that?
I generally start everyone with a training day diet and an off day diet. Sometimes they're the exact same, but in plans, I always send both. And that way I might just pull from one day. as we're moving along. So it does become carb cycling generally. Um, in terms of like prioritizing carbs on one day over the other, it's logical because we don't really need the carbs if we're just kind of chilling. If we're just hanging around, we're not training, we don't need the carbs. I don't um I don't just pull from carbs though. If we have a moderate amount of fats, uh it's all energy. So I kind of just pull from that off day if I'm going to pull from the off day. Um, but I do carb cycling. I think it's very effective. Um, some bodies that are more resistant, um, they I don't know why they seem to do better when the diet is the exact same. Also, adherence. When we have people with like binge eating disorders and trouble sticking to it, going back and forth, that seems to create a big problem. Um, so on those people, it's like you're kind of looking at it a little differently, more from a psychological perspective. And you're thinking, okay, how do I get this athlete to the finish line um, with their best package? And really just keeping them on track is more important than doing things optimally. So you kind of have to weigh those out. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally understand your statement about that, but let's say we are still talking about me. And last time I get off my diet or eat something that wasn't on my diet was never. Uh,
Okay. Yeah.
so
Well,
so let's say
then,
that you have like a perfect scenario
yep.
and you wanted to set it up in the way that's in your opinion gonna yield the best results. Okay.
Yep. So in the off season, my goal will be to build that off day to be the same as the training day. I want the carbs the same. So the carbs can be high all the time. And then as we start, it'll be very easy to pull from that off day um, because you don't need it there, right?
Yeah.
And it still allows that training day to be as high as possible. And that's what we want ideally is you want the best performance and the best recovery when you need it. So for sure. And that was funny. It was just like never. I mean, you know, it's kind of rare to have people like you who are just like bodybuilding hardcore, but you make things so easy because you just like we know you're following the plan, we know you're doing it. So yeah, ideally, that's what I want to do. I want to push that off day up, be calorically right around the same as training day, so that when we do prep, it's very easy to pull from that off day, and you still like you get to leg day and you're not as hungry, you're feeling good, things are moving.
Okay, okay, great. So let's talk a little bit about the like a loading days or cheat meals, or are you incorporate that on your clients' plans? Let's keep your in mind that we are talking about me, and I normally do the cheat meals never. So it's not something that I really need to. For example, my coach this previous off season told me that I could have one if I wanted to a week, but I think I never even order anything. So,
Yeah.
and this is not because I am like a hardcore or like a
Yeah.
Nick Walker 2.0 or something like that.
Mhm.
It's just because for me, I just don't need it. I like my diet. I like my lifestyle, and this is something that's are not anything that I really need. Like
Sure.
let's say like that. So for example, I was coaching by Dominic Mutasio for 1 year, and he basically told me to have a one cheat day a week, and that was something that's actually a little bit get me off him because mentally that was hard for me to do
Yeah.
something like that because I have to know how much food I eat. So
100%.
on
Yep.
those days, that was really hard for me. So how do you thinking about the cheat meals? Is this is something necessary for you, or it is something that's optional? How do you think about it?
Right. So first, I totally relate with that. When I worked with Chad,
Yeah,
uh,
Chad
I'm
likes it.
sure you
Yeah,
I'm sure you've
Chad
heard those stories, man. It'd
loves.
be
Yeah,
off season was Saturday and Sunday, heat day. And for me, mentally, it messed with me.
yeah.
And calorically, my meals would end up being lower than training days
I had the
because
same problem. Yeah.
I literally just couldn't wrap my mind around like eating a pizza and other crap. I'm like, it's so I would try, like, I would get sushi, which I'm like, okay, and it's fish. And I'm kind of counting in my head, okay. Then I
Mm,
had this steak and I'm trying to get the protein but it just, I liked my regular meals. I like bodybuilding food. And so, yeah, I'm with you. So for me, ideally, it's like quality is what's most important here, right? And so, what's better? Is the steak that you're cooking in your house better, or is a burger better? A fast food burger is not the same quality. Period. Cheat meals are used for mental reprieve, lots of sodium and fat. That serves a purpose. It's easy, whatever. Ideally, generally, what we're looking for is a structured refeed. And then you can calculate it. You can look at the look and then be able to pull it up or down.
yeah.
When we're coming into, um, obviously, if we're talking about you for off season, um, just having high carb days is pretty effective. The only problem you run into is that might ending up a lot to eat. And
Not
so
a
cheat
problem.
meals. Okay,
Up to
if I
300,000 carbs for meals for one day is easy.
so that's the only problem you run into, and if that's not a problem, then it's not a problem. The preference here is um, to be able to track what you're eating. In my opinion, it's like cheat meals are used for social interaction. You have a wife who wants to go on a date, that kind of thing. That's what it's for. It's mental. It doesn't help. There's nothing about it you can get from a restaurant that is going to be more beneficial than what you can make.
Yeah, of course, of course. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Okay, so uh, keeping on a diet subject, I just wanted to ask you, what's in your opinion the biggest mistakes that athletes make in the off season? Yeah, I'm asking you from your experience because you work with a lot of athletes and you definitely saw that stupid ideas and what is the most common mistake that athletes make that's ruined their off season?
Good question. Um, Cheating while you're taking insulin, um, because you're just super gluing that fat right in. Um, I mean, really, it's adding anything that I don't know about.
Yeah.
Not having that discussion, um, skipping cardio, uh, not getting blood work. That could end up causing a cascade of things, which uh, cause issues. Not taking the vitamins. I think we take things like TUDCA to protect our liver. Our liver is it burns more fat than any other organ in the body. And you get to prep. If you haven't taken care of your liver the whole time, you have an issue. That which leads into this, not drinking water. It's very hard for a lot of these athletes to drink water.
Yeah.
I don't know why. Um, but as far as the cheapest, easiest health
Supplement,
supplement,
yeah.
it's water. Drink your water, you know? Taking Serostem is more fun, but drinking your water is so helpful.
Yeah.
It helps every organ. it's going to help hydrate you and make sure that you are not weak in the gym. You're going to feel better. You're going to look better. You're going to digest things better. Water. Those are
Okay.
probably the biggest ones.
Okay, so let's push it a little bit further. Mini cats, because this is a topic that's are very on the subject right now. Many
Yep.
coaches starting to incorporate it almost in some sort of routine fashion. So, for example,
Mm-hmm.
every 8 weeks, every 10 weeks
Sure.
on a
Sure.
dot. And what's your opinion about the mini cuts during the off season? Are they necessary? Where, when they are necessary, and how to make it the best option possible. So, for example, making an off season in a fashion that you don't have to do the mini cuts or something like that.
I think that's the key. That's the key. Um, Sometimes you can't help it. Sometimes, um, sometimes maybe you think you're adding more muscle than you are. Sometimes the athlete's cheating. Sometimes you're on a roll with strength and you're trying to push it and you're like, okay, I want to keep food at this level. I'm just going to see how far they can get. And you've been going for a long time. Ideally, you don't mini cut. Ideally, your body fat stays at a level where you don't have to. Um, I do not ever schedule a mini cut in terms of, oh, in 8 weeks we're going to do this.
Yeah.
No, because my goal is to have us not get there. Um, I don't I don't like putting a number in my head like, okay, you're 100 kilos. It's like I want you to be 140 kilos. It's like, why?
Yeah.
For me, I want to take the look and I want to make sure we keep a certain look and push that as far as possible, getting as strong as possible, making, as much progress amongst all the facets in the gym as we can while keeping digestion good, waist pretty tight, not huge pinches in your trouble areas like your glutes or, etc. Um, but there comes a point where whether it's an athlete's being lax or um, things just happen. Maybe I mean it could be the coach not seeing it, but where you have to do a mini cut. Anything beyond that point, if you don't, you're hurting the athlete because it's like they've gotten too fat, in my opinion, to make progress that's actually beneficial to them.
Okay.
So I employ them when I have to.
Okay. So, just wanted to confirm, just because sometimes you do the mini cats, but not for the physique reasons, but for example, digestion reasons. So, in
Sure.
this situations, how you like to approach it for like a very rapid, short
Yep.
cut, or like maybe 2 to 3 weeks on the significant lower like a carbs or protein maybe or something like that.
I think, I mean, I would think 2 weeks is pretty quick. Because when I think about a mini cut, usually I think like a 6 to 8 week situation, hopefully. But yeah, I want to do it as quick as possible. Um, and sometimes you're looking at an athlete who's just, man, no appetite, can't eat. They feel terrible. It's like I've pushed my food as far as I can push it for as long as I could. I'm stuffed. I want to vomit every meal. It's like, okay, no problem. Um, First thing generally you look at is fats. Fats high. We need to pull those out. Um, Calorically, you can replace it a little bit with fruit. Very easy to digest and eat, and people seem to be able to. They have an appetite for that. Whereas, if you have lots of fat in the diet, it bogs it down. But I might reduce the protein a little bit. Um, let's say I'm pulling 20% off the protein. Um, and then I probably pull everything down as well. Fats are pretty nil. I'm going to pull those before I pull carbs. I'm going to pull more fats than I will carbs, but I'll probably pull everything down. And let's say they're hungry. Usually people are hungry pretty quickly after that.
Yeah.
Let's say 5 days is where they're hungry. I'm going to push it to 10 days. I will push it past when they're hungry to make sure we're in a good place, and then I'll start bumping things up.
Okay, great. Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. So, what about the cardio in the off season? Before you told the one of the mistakes are not doing the cardio in the off season. So, are you huge on the cardio when it comes to the off season?
I'm not huge on the cardio. I think cardio is important for a couple of reasons, especially when you're like a really big guy. Uh, the lung capacity uh, is helpful in training. I feel like if you're cardiovascularly healthy, you train legs harder. Something like, let's say, hacks are a great example. Like 15 to 20 reps on a hack squat is so hard if you can't breathe. Um, it's hard muscularly
Yeah.
with like your muscular system, but it's also hard with just like your lungs. So I think that's important. I don't think anyone needs to be doing 7 days of cardio, but something challenging for 15 to 20 minutes, 3 times a week, I think is pretty important for everybody, just for health. And especially when you're carrying lots of muscle, my goal is to make everyone as healthy as possible, because we're kind of pushing our body in every facet, right? So making sure that we are healthy is paramount.
Okay, you just opened a new door
Okay.
because you told me something that's really hard, 3 to 4 times a week, 25 minutes. So, what do you mean by cardio? Like a lease or something more like a
Oh,
hit?
so if I'm looking at 15 to 20 minutes, then that probably 10 to 15, that'd be closer to hit. If I'm doing 20 minutes, it's less.
Okay.
Um, with a big guy, I want you to go for a walk. Going for a walk is going to get your heart rate up. We're going to be fine. If you're a smaller guy, you're going to have to work a little harder. Uh,
Yeah, understood.
but someone like Luke Sando, he walked on the treadmill very slowly, and his heart rate was fine. You know,
Yeah.
he was a big guy. But I especially like the bike, if you can fit on a bike, um, because there's no eccentric portion. Um, and it seems like every time someone gets off a spin bike, their legs are crazy pumped. And especially when you're looking at recovering from things, it helps.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Makes sense. So, what about the probably stuffs that most people are waiting for? So, PEDs in the off season. Do you like to stick to the basics? So, for example, like a high testosterone and one anabolic or something like that, or do you prefer the way that is most common right now? So, for example, like a lower test, but you feel the rest of the milligrams by adding something like DHT derivative or something like that.
No, I've never gotten into that. I've tried it personally because I've experimented with things, but honestly, I feel what's when you're building a a protocol for a guy, the most important things are probably test and growth hormone. Obviously, some people can't afford growth hormone. Assuming you can afford everything, test and growth hormone. Those are your most important things, and then you're looking at other anabolics. I really like Primo. That's a good one to add on. I really like Equipoise. Uh, I think equipoise causes anxiety in some people, and there are problems with any PED. But if you're looking at like your base, test and growth hormone, and then you build from there. So, I mean, a typical cycle might be test growth hormone. Um, let's say EQ and MPP. That's like a big fat. Let's get ready cycle.
Yeah. So three compounds.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not counting GH just because for me GH is just like a cherry on the top. So
I
this
don't.
is never
I,
come off.
well, I don't disagree with not coming off, but I don't think it's a cherry on top. I think it's really important. Obviously, we
Yeah,
have some people who respond to it more than others,
I not
but
meant it cherry on top like something to like for me it's basics. For me,
Yeah,
for an athlete who is inspired to get a pro card or national level competitor or something like that, it's pretty much like a brief affair. So
sure,
it's not supposed to be even a situation that you cannot afford it. Because if you are cannot
sure,
afford it, you're probably not supposed to be a bodybuilder because it's not for you.
sure.
Yeah, I know it's harsh for some people to hear that, but this is like I think a pretty bold and pretty real statement, I think.
Yeah,
So yeah, if you wanted to be a good bodybuilder, you have to afford those things because this is like a basics. If you're standing next to a 10, 15 guys who are basically keep the GH never under
mm,
10 IU yearly,
right,
so
right.
probably you have a little chance to none,
Yeah,
assuming you are not a Ronnie Coleman who's
right.
winning it
Assuming
naturally. Yeah,
regular person genetics,
yeah, yeah.
it's something you need. Yeah.
So I am not gonna ask you about the PEDs dosages because this is so like person dependent, and it's
Right.
I think it's not necessary to talk about that things on YouTube, but I
Sure.
am gonna ask you about the GH because GH for me it's like warm milk, so it's not harsh at
Okay.
all. So how much GH do you like to use? Do you think that
Um,
more is more, or obviously assuming that we are can like handle the side effects? Because if
right,
our blood sugar is creeping up or carpal tunnel syndrome
right.
is not bearable and stuff like that, obviously we have to lower it. But for example,
Mhm.
if I can run 10, 20, 30 IUs and have none
Yeah.
of a problem. Do you think it's worth it?
That's like GH15. Uh, more is better till it's not. There is that till it's not point for everyone. Everyone's might be different, but more is better till it's not. I think the only issue there is uh, someone's point where it's not better, they will often ignore the signs and continue to push past. So let's say your more is better till it's not is 8 IUs. 8 IUs is great. That's like a good dose. And but you're fuller and you see some positives at 12. They might not stop till they hit 15, but really it's still 8. I If I'm looking at like the minimum I'm putting someone on, if we're looking at not looking at money, 4 IUs is probably minimum, right? I feel like that's really efficacious. Um, for me, I think 6 is a really good sweet spot. I don't see a lot of negatives from 6. For most people, if you're healthy and everything, I don't see a lot of negatives. I see mostly positives, especially if you're splitting it. You can do a dose of 2 IUs and a dose of 4 IUs. You're getting pretty good benefits from that. You're leaner, you're bigger. Um, 8 and 9, I think this is where we start to see some negatives with some people, right? Or a good bit more people. I think with 8, there's a lot of positives. With 9, you're seeing a lot of insulin sensitivity with most people. Things are messing up. It's hard to say. I think probably if we're looking at general limits, 9, 10 IUs, you're up there. If someone's taking um, I'll say 6. We'll say 6. I don't see that there's probably not going to be anything wrong. You're probably only going to get better.
Okay. Yeah, I obviously I was joking about the 30 and stuff like that because
Sure, sure.
probably that will be bearable for most of the people. But I am asking just because I've pretty much run 10 IU whole year. I've never
Yeah.
get off the 10 IUs. And for me, it's like a normal dose. I have no issues with that. I don't see that many people with issues with 10 IUs. obviously, if they are sticking to their plan, so if they are active
Right.
follower, they eating clean, they are taking the all health subs, they are drinking water and stuff like that. Obviously, that's like a that's like a first thing you have to think about when you are taking it. Not even insulin and stuff like that, but
Right.
obviously the insulin part it is important. So I just wanted to ask you, how do you like use GH? Because there are quite a lot of studies that's shown that probably the best idea is to put every like the whole dose before the bed.
Mhm.
And those there are those coaches who are talking about taking it on an empty stomach. Those
Right.
coaches who are splitting it three, four, six times daily.
Mhm.
Those coaches who are run it the whole dose right before the workout and stuff like
Yeah.
that. Probably, to be honest, with all the people they are watching, that's really doesn't matter
Yeah.
for the bigger picture.
Yeah.
Just take your GH and you're fine. But
Yeah.
everyone has their favorites. So what's
Yeah.
yours? And do you
Sure.
like to incorporate the insulin? And if so, why and how?
Okay. Um, so first I'll start by saying like I agree. Probably in the bigger picture, it doesn't matter. We're working with small percentages.
Yeah,
With with bodybuilders, especially who work this hard, obviously they always want that 1%. And
yeah,
so it's like it's your job to give it to them. Um, I think the the best you're going to get is before bed and in the middle of the night. Those are probably your best in terms of recovery in general, especially if we're looking at growing. I think those are pretty important. Um, if we're looking at just fat oxidation, you're wanting empty stomach, you're wanting probably more doses. So I like morning, I like pre workout, I like before bed. I think those are great. Oh, I love in the middle of the night. The problem is someone waking up to do it.
yeah.
It's user error, right? It's not because I don't like it. I really like that option. I generally pick pre-workout before post-workout because of insulin. Um, I want I don't want to mess with insulin sensitivity if we have, you know, post-workout to deal with and all that. I like it, but I think post is effective. It's just managing all the variables, right? So
Yeah.
ideally you're managing them all correctly, but you're trusting someone else to do it and whose body's changing constantly and you're
Yeah, of
trusting them to make the
course.
right decision, right? um, but my favorites are before bed. I mean, that's if I have to pick one, that's my favorite. I think that's great. And I probably would stop the bolus dose at 4. If I have more than that, I want to move it somewhere else.
Okay. So let's say that I'm taking 10 IUs. How do you split it in the off-season setup?
Okay. I would probably do I probably do 2 in the morning. I do 4 pre-workout, 4 before bed.
Okay. Okay. Great. So let's keep it moving. I wanted to ask you about the estrogen because
Sure.
there are like a tendency right now to not use an AI because
Mhm.
some people think that AI is causing the more problem than actually estrogen, or they're trying to offset the estrogens by using DHT derivatives and stuff like that. So what's your approach and how high you like to keep your guys when it comes to estrogen? Obviously, let's says that they are, for example, in range X, feeling okay.
Okay. Yeah, a general number that I'm looking for is 40. Some 35, 40. I think that's good. If you feel really good, that's middle. I don't want high estrogen. So I know it's really popular to be like, oh, well, I don't want an AI because they cause issues with cholesterol, blah, blah, blah. I don't want high estrogen. And so a lot of The first option those people have is they're like, well, I'll just run test low. I'm like, I don't want to run test low.
Yeah.
So I already have a problem. And then it's just like, oh, well, maybe I'll use primobolan to pull that down, or another DHT, mast, I'll pull it down that way. I'm trusting this other thing to do something that I know I can do with aromasin.
Yeah.
I'd rather just do it directly, and then I can use whatever anabolic I want. So that's how I look at it. I'm not going to run, especially when you have like a really estrogenic person. Me, for example, if I run 500 milligrams of test, I will need something to lower estrogen. That's in other people, 750, no problem. It's at 40, 41. For me, I know I need it, especially like I'm not, if I was bodybuilding, I'm not going to run 500 milligrams test. It's like, I want to do this, right? So I'm like not a beginner. I want to go for it. So yeah, I health wise, probably a positive thing. But if we're talking about bodybuilding and building muscle, I don't want, and estrogen is important for all that, but I don't think having crazy high estrogen is good for you. And if you don't have your glands removed, it's not a good idea either, because if you end up with gyno, well, that's a problem.
That was something I wanted to ask, because you told me that 500 milligrams of test is basically unbearable without AI for you. Do you have your glands removed or not?
No.
Because I find out that after I remove it, now I'm managing the estrogen really, really well. Seriously, I don't know why. I don't know how it works. I don't know the science behind that. And I talk about that with many coaches, and they don't know either. But this is something that's causing it.
I don't have an answer or a reason, but I do know people who have told me that.
Yeah.
And it's been enough coaches and friends to where it's like I believe it.
Yeah.
When they've removed their glands, they can run more without an AI with no problems.
Yeah.
And it's not just side effects, it's been blood work. So when you have that kind of proof, okay, great, do it. For me, it's like, yeah, I don't have my glands removed. I've always had a small bit of gyno. I've just been like, okay, very mindful of not to aggravate it. And then you can't really tell.
Yeah. I just wanted to add that just because maybe for some people who have struggling with that's something that's really great to do. Just remove your gland, because probably you have to do it in some point of your life if you want to be a bodybuilder. So why not doing it right away and just don't have that many problem?
Honestly, especially if you're thinking in terms of like, oh, I'm taking this big break, I'm going to grow for a year and a half. You might as well take the time and go ahead and get it done. I 100% agree. I think that you're going to have to stop at some point if you're taking this seriously to go do it.
Of course.
Right? So you might as well just get it done. And especially when there is that positive of, it seems like most people don't have to use as much AI. Why not?
Yeah, of course. So let's comes to the end of the discussion of the off season, but ending on the blood pressure, because if we are gonna pushing my weight up, probably there's gonna be a point in this journey that my blood pressure is gonna raise up. Are you using something like a telmisartan or something like ARB just to keep your heart rate a little bit lower and your blood pressure with your guys? I am not asking if they need it, but some coaches are doing it.
Preemptively.
Yeah.
Okay. No, I don't do it preemptively.
Yeah.
I think that there's a couple ways you can keep it down already, right? If you're drinking your water, thinning the blood. If you're taking a baby aspirin, that's generally healthy in general, the 81 milligram aspirin. Doing a little bit of cardio is going to help with that as well. These things are keeping you healthier. If you're looking even a little further, supplemental, 10 milligrams of Cialis, better pumps, you're going to kind of mitigate that issue as well. Um, I I don't mind ACE inhibitors and other things to help. Um, in my opinion, the health of the athlete is more important than not being on a medication. But my goal would be to have them not need it. They are so healthy that they don't need it.
Of
And of
course.
course, if you do need it, then we take care of it.
Of course, yeah, yeah. This is something that I wanted to address because I see it very. Um, there's a common thing right now
Sure.
in our industry to just add it. It's like
Yeah.
add it an AI right in the start with a new cycle, something like that. And for me, it is most of the times not necessary because if we are not even know what's the readings on the blood works is, that probably we don't have to do that. But yeah, but this is something that I wanted to just address. One more thing, because there are coaches who are preaching still about doing PCTs. There are
Okay.
coaches that are preaching about doing the blast and cruise. And
Mhm.
there are those who are preaching about being a bodybuilder 365 days in a year.
Yeah.
What's of three of this option you are just falling into?
I fall in between being a bodybuilder all the time and blast and cruise. Um, Kind of what the way I approach it with my guys is um, if health markers are great, we don't need to come off everything.
Yeah,
Um, we can, uh, it's probably important health wise to take breaks from anabolics and you have your test and your growth hormone and whatever. There's times to take breaks from that. Generally, the goal of these things when you're talking about a blast and cruise is we're like, okay, I pushed it and now my cholesterol is messed up and this is messed up and this is, so I'm going to come down and I'm going to fix it and then I'll go back up and mess
yeah,
it up again. If we just don't
crazy.
go crazy and mess it up off the bat, you can start doing these things a bit longer. We start to see something skewed. Absolutely, make sure it's taken care of. Um, but generally, I would think the good times to take like breaks, um, post show. If you're healthy right at the show, then you can continue that rebound phase. And then you can take a break where you're just on tests, you're on growth hormone, you're making sure you're healthy, you're getting your body ready to be on anabolics more. Um, if you're not healthy, you can still do a rebound. Here's how I would do it. I would come off the show strict on diet, lower anabolics, or I mean, just the test and GH basically. You're taking the 6 to 8 week break. You're making sure markers get back in line. Once health is there, cardio's been lowered, food's pretty low. Start building that up, and then you take your rebound. Making sure you're healthy first. Uh, Matt Porter was the one who started doing that a bit more. Um, Making sure like okay he got his guys like healthy first and then they took the rebound. The only issue you ever run into is people not being able to mentally hold it together after
Yeah,
the show. As long as you have one of those like kind of razor sharp bodybuilder guys, it's not a problem.
yeah, of course. Have you got a couple more minutes? Because
Yes, sir.
I wanted to close that podcast with a transition into the prep mode because I wanted
Sure.
to ask you, do you like to do something like time off or deloads before transitioning to the prep? And also, are you doing something like a hold phase after, for example, let's say we wanted to get me over the weight class, so probably we were bulking about 1 year, something like that, like the whole time took us, for example,
Mhm.
10 months. So do you like me to stay on the higher body weight for a couple of more weeks or something like that, just to, like, I don't know, like, keep the muscle more sticked or something like that?
Um, I can't. There's something to it, right? I can't really put my finger on like what's happening biologically there, but holding the weight there longer, it helps. If you just cut your weight and you come back down, there doesn't seem to be that progress. I don't think necessarily it needs to be like, okay, we did this phase and then we did like a hold phase, but there needs to be a period where you're making sure that strength is high, um, performance is good, and body weight isn't going up and down. Um, if it's linear the whole time, um, progress, body weight, etc., then going, I don't think you would need to add 6 weeks. It's kind because it's kind of been going up the whole time.
Yeah.
Kind of coming back down here, you've had the hold phase. It's just been here instead of here. You know,
Okay.
um, I guess it kind of depends, but I think if you have a year, for sure, most of your progress is going to come earlier on. And then the rest of the time, it will probably be the last 12 to 16 weeks where you're still hammering and progress is coming, but it's in much smaller increments, right?
Yeah.
And that basically is the hold phase.
Okay.
I do think that's um, important.
Okay. So do you like to do
Do you
something
like to
like
do
a
something?
deload or maybe even bridge phase or from PEDs or something like that before coming into a
Uh,
prep, or you go in straight into a prep?
so uh, most of the time, no. Most of the time, I don't do a bridge or anything like that. And it's not because I don't think it's a good idea. But I guess a lot of the time is just in off season, I'm not pushing anabolic super hard. In prep is when it's harsher on the body, right? So uh, if we're looking at a deload, deloads, I take them when people need them. Um, and if I'm seeing performance go down, pumps aren't great. Um, Something's off, right? It's just like they've been going for a while and their body fat isn't too high. We don't think it's insulin sensitivity. It's like, okay, it looks like you just look inflamed. You look like you need a break. Okay, pull back. I usually pull back the general volume. I pull back intensity a little bit. Um, and I might even have them take just days off. Like, okay, listen, you checked in on Wednesday, take the rest of the week off. And then send me pictures on Monday and we'll discuss your next week. Whatever I'm doing, I'm pulling some off. I'm making sure that they're taking it easier. I don't, for some people, it's like if they walk into that gym, they're going to send the plates into punishment. They're going to go there
Yeah.
and they're going to kill everything. So those guys, you're like literally, you cannot walk in the gym. You're off this week, period. Because they just can't help themselves. And with other people, you can pull them back. So whether we're closer or not, I just pull them back. I generally don't plan to do it right before. My goal is to keep everybody clicking and not being like, oh man, I pushed you so hard that I have to pull you back right now. And I don't think necessarily people automatically need it. So it's situational. But I don't dislike the idea. It's just, you know, it depends on that one. And that was with deloading. What was the other one?
About the health phase, but we are assessed that's not
Yeah,
needed.
yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
my goal is to have you not need to just stop right before we restart.
Okay. So to sum it up, let's says that we were starting up with my push phase to the new weight class. I was 5'7", 230 pounds. So it's like 105 kilos, something like that.
Mhm.
And how do you like me to finish with what weight?
Okay.
I know that,
So
let's get it
yeah,
right. I know that
sure.
depends on how I look, but
Yeah.
obviously everyone has some sort of like frames that's like to
Mhm.
push it up, for example, 20, 30, 40, 50 pounds over the stage weight.
For those, so at 5'7", it changes things. But we're probably looking at 30, 40 pounds above, probably closer to 40. So if you're going to be 230 on stage, I'm probably seeing you around 270 with pretty good abs, right? That's probably what we're looking at. And then around like you're dieting down, 250, you look really good. And 240, you look like, whoa. By the time you're 230, it's you're walking around with sandpaper skin, you know? So 270-ish, maybe even like 275, 280. It kind of depends because once you get into these bigger weight classes, that super heavy weight class, most of these guys look pretty damn good
Yeah,
at 280. Um,
yeah,
so it kind of depends. As long as you're holding it well and there's not a lot of trouble, I don't mind pushing you that far. I will, especially when you're trying to move up a weight class, you basically push it as hard as the body will let you. Um, and as long as the body will let you, just like the goal is to grow as much as possible, as quickly as possible, without, making huge sacrifices in other areas. Like if your waist grows 2 inches, it doesn't matter that your leg grows 2 inches. It's like it just doesn't look as good.
yeah.
Um, so, and I think that's really the only issue in these big jumps. I enjoy pushing people for big jumps. When you do them super fast, especially with lots of food, you can start blowing out people's midsections.
Okay.
And I'm not Mr. Aesthetic. You have to be super aesthetic. I like big guys. My favorite bodybuilders are always just huge. But when you're just looking at it, it just doesn't look as impressive. So if you can keep that intact and you're just doing it smart, you're not being obsessed with their midsection, but you're just being smart, you end up with a better package on stage.
Of course, of course. Yeah, I just wanted to ask about that because there are people who are thinking about keeping it too lean because for most of the guys being 5'7" and 230 on stage is quite a good
Yeah.
position. Yeah. So they might think that they are too advanced for pushing the weight like that. Because for beginners, it's normal to push it like that. I mean, you have to.
Sure.
But for those guys who are more on the advanced side of the spectrum, that's maybe that might not be the best idea in the eye of some of the coaches.
I think there's a couple factors to look at there, right? How many times have they had to do this? Um, if you had to, if you really struggled to go from middle to light heavy and from light heavy to heavy, pushing you super hard from super or from heavy to super, it's probably not going to work as well. You've like kind of eked a lot out of your body. For sure, the more advanced people, you're getting small returns. Staying leaner helps, period. However, if when you started, you were a light heavy and pretty decently muscular and you responded really well moving up, you can push a little more and it seems like that'll happen. It's kind of the same thing as um, putting muscle on someone who's older. If they haven't been training as long, it's easier. Their training age isn't as old, you know?
Yeah,
So their body's a bit fresher. The fresher your body is to the stimulus, which is training, food, drugs, the fresher it is to that, the more responsive it's going to be. If you've been doing drugs for 20 years and eating like a bodybuilder for 20 years, giving you extra rice and a little bit of insulin in like bigger amounts, it's only going to take you so far.
yeah,
You just need more time. So it kind of depends on those factors. If we're looking about an ideal situation where this person's super healthy, they're responding really well, then yeah, I think that works pretty well. Once you get
Great.
down to the nitty gritty, yeah, I mean, it depends with that.
Yeah, great. Yeah, listen, Nelson. I wanted to thank you so much for taking your time. Just because I think that you're really a small mind of a knowledge, because like we said on the beginning, you are not a marketer. You are a legit coach. So I think that bringing your opinion about the off season is something that's gonna help not only me, but all of the people that's gonna watch or just listen to this podcast. So for those who are living under the rock and not knowing you yet, every email to contact you for the coaching and Instagram and stuff like that's gonna be in the description box below, so you can find the information about Nelson down there. And for those who are stick with us to the end of this podcast, I would like to uh, maybe ask you. I don't know if asking you is a good term, but to subscribe, to follow, to leave a comment, to share it if it's possible. Just because the algorithm of a YouTube is shitty for me, because I'm living in Europe and you're living in the United States. So this is like an English one podcast. So for those who are not speaking Polish, it's gonna be a really tough to find out this podcast. This is why I have really great guests and they hits like maybe thousands to thousands views, because
Sure.
basically the algorithm just sucks for the Polish people outside the
Sure.
borders. So for everyone who can just share it, I will be really appreciative of that. And yeah, I just wanted to thank you one more time. And if you have something to add, this is your time.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I'd be happy to come on anytime.
Yeah, I would really love to make another one with you, but about the contest prep and the proper picking for the artists, because we just can't bring me to the new weight class and not pick me on the show.
That's true.
That will be a sin.
Yeah, it'd be a disservice to the
Yeah,
people.
of course. So thank you one more time,
My
and
pleasure.
just have a nice day.
All right, you too. Bye, guys.
Bye.